Hi everyone, this is Ray, the singing Tallit, reading today's Torah portion and discussing it. I don't know if you knew, but we have some foster children in the house, and it's their nap time, so I got about an hour and a half to read this with quiet in the house. They're quite young, so they're full of energy and sound and noise and the capacity to break things. So I'm going to read the Torah portion, Terumah, today. It's not tiramisu, but Terumah. It's going to go from chapter 25 through 27 of Exodus. We're going to read some of First Kings, and we'll read some of the book of Hebrews. Now, the reason that we're reading these Torah portions is, if you recall in the book of Acts, it says that every Sabbath, the law of Moses is read in the synagogue. And even at that time, they were reading these same Torah portions. Torah scrolls were expensive to make, relatively hard to come by. People who actually were in ownership were either very wealthy or was a part of a big group effort for the community. There was typically a Torah scroll at a synagogue would be a place you could get access to it. And then they probably have some of the scrolls of the different prophets and maybe some of the histories. Of course, there were no formal, they didn't have the printed Bible. This didn't come around to the time of the Gutenberg press, which is, 1,000+ years later. So they had to go to where the word was so that they could actually have it read. And then for people who were particularly poor, dispersed every 7th year at the festival of Sukkot, in accordance with the orders of King Josiah, the Deuteronomy, at least, was read aloud every 7th year. That's during the Shemitah year when people would come to the festival of Sukkot. It would be read aloud to them so that they could know whether you were illiterate or a highly educated person. There was no reason that you would not be allowed to know what was written in the law of Moses. So let's go ahead and start here with 25. We've just read in the previous Torah portion laws concerning people taking care of one another, laws concerning the way judges should deal with people, and how people should settle disputes between them involving property breakage or the death of a person, things like that. We're going to see similar rule sets being described this time. It's going to be more like what you need to bring as a payment to Yehovah. I guess that's in the right. Let's say a gift. Payment's probably not the right word. Let's say a gift given to Yehovah in appreciation for all that He has done. Exodus chapter 25. And Yehovah spoke unto Moshe, saying, Speaking to the children of Israel, that they bring me an offering of every man that gives it willingly with his heart. You shall take my offering. And this is the offering which he shall take of them: gold and silver and brass, blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen and goat's hair, and rams and skins dyed red, and badger skins and shittim wood, oil for the light, and spices for anointing oil, and for the sweet incense, onyx stones, and stones to be set in the ephod and in the breastplate. And let them make me a sanctuary, that I might dwell among them, according to all that I show you, before the pattern of the tabernacle and of the pattern of the instruments thereof. Even so shall you make it. And they shall make an ark of shittim wood. 2 cubits and a half shall be the length thereof, and 1 cubit and a half the breadth, and 1 cubit and a half the height thereof. And you shall overlay it with pure gold within it, and without shall you overlay it, and shall make upon it the crown of gold round about. And you shall cast 4 rings of gold upon it, and put them in the 4 corners thereof, and 2 rings shall be in one side of it, and 2 rings in the other side of it. And you shall make staves of shittim wood, and overlay them with gold. And you shall put them in the staves into the rings on the sides of the ark, that the ark may be borne with them. And the staves shall be in the rings of the ark, that they should not be taken from it. And you shall put into the ark the testimony which I will give you. And you shall make a mercy seat of pure gold, and 2.5 cubits shall be the length thereof, and 1.5 cubits the breadth thereof. And you shall make 2 cherubims of gold, of beaten work shall you make them, and in the 2 ends of the mercy seat. And make 1 cherub on the one end, and the other cherub on the other end. Even of the mercy seat shall you make the cherubim on the 2 ends thereof. And the cherubim shall stretch their wings on high, covering the mercy seat with their wings. And their faces shall look one to another towards the mercy seat, shall the faces of the cherubim be. And you shall put the mercy seat above upon the ark, and in the ark you shall put the testimony that I shall give you. And there I will meet with you, and I will commune with you from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubims, which are upon the ark of the testimony. All of these things which I will give you in commandment upon the children of Israel. You shall make a table of shittim wood. 2 cubits shall be the length thereof, and a cubit the breadth thereof, and a cubit the height thereof. And you shall overlay it with pure gold, and make thereto a crown of it of pure gold. And shall make and there shall overlay with pure gold, make a crown of gold around it. And you shall make unto the border of a handbreadth round about it, and you shall make a golden crown to the border thereof round about it. And you shall make for it 4 rings of gold, and put the rings in the 4 corners that they are of the 4 feet thereof. And over against the border shall the rings be for the places of the staves to bear the table. And you shall make the staves of shittim wood, and overlay them with gold, that the table may be borne with them. And you shall make the dishes thereof, and the spoons thereof, and the covers thereof, and the bowls thereof, and a cover withal. Of pure gold shall you make them. And you shall set them on the table of showbread before me always. And you shall make a candlestick of pure gold. Of beaten work shall the candlestick be made. This shaft and its branches and its bowls and its knops and its flowers shall all be the same. And the 6 branches shall come out of the sides of it. 3 branches of the candlestick out of the one side, and 3 branches of the candlestick out of the other side. 3 bowls made like unto almonds, with a knop and a flower on each branch. And 3 bowls made like almonds in the other branch, with a knop and with a flower, so that in the 6 branches that come out of the candlestick. And in the candlestick shall be 4 bowls made like unto almonds, with their knops and their flowers. And there shall be a knop under 2 branches of the same, and a knop under 2 branches of the same, and a knop under 2 branches of the same, according to the 6 branches that proceed out of the candlestick. Their knops and their branches shall be of the same, all that shall be of one beaten work of gold. And you shall make 7 lamps thereof, and that they shall light the lamps thereof, that they might give light over it. And the tongs thereof, and the snuff dishes thereof, shall be of pure gold. And a talent of pure gold shall he make with all these vessels. And look unto that which of them is after the pattern which I have showed you here on the mount. So this is some of the evidence that's used to support the existence of the oral Torah, Torah Ba'al-Peh, which is that here you see Yehovah says, build it in the way that I have shown you here on the mountain. There's no specific, we don't have any diagrams in here, we don't have any pictures, we don't have anything to go by except the written instructions. But according to what Yehovah has said here, he showed Moses directly how he wanted it made, even though it's not written here in the Torah. And that's some of the evidence used to support why the oral Torah must exist, because there must be some of this information that was given by Yehovah directly to Moses and the 70. They would say to the 70 elders as well. It must be in existence, and it must be there for a purpose. So it must be what was passed along as oral tradition. Like, for instance, Yehovah says, put the testimony I give you inside the ark. But at the same time, there's other testimonies that seem to be just completely orally transmitted here, not written down, but orally given. And that's where the idea of there being two Torahs, one which is the official written Torah, which is, set in stone per se, so that it does not change, and the other is the living document, which is the oral Torah, which unfortunately for folks who like it to be a living document, it was written down officially as the Mishnah in the late 100s, and then I believe it was redacted and edited in the 300s by Judah the Prince is the name of the man who's credited with changing the Mishnah and making it more streamlined in the way that it expressed things. But the Mishnah is the written account of what's stated in the oral law. And of course a lot of rabbis and modern folks don't like that it was written down. Number one, because that meant that the hidden knowledge that only the rabbis and the Pharisees had became open, which, if you're going to run a secret society, you have to have your secrets, right? Well, the Mishnah officially took the lid off the secrets and said, here, this is what all the teachings of the oral Torah are. Now everyone can have a copy of it and everyone can see it, which was considered, at least at the time, to be the right way to deal with the religion. Now, when we're reading through here, you see a lot of the orders to give pure gold when you make these things, like a lampstand made of pure gold, which, by the way, would be extremely heavy. Gold is as heavy as lead, and if you make a 6-foot tall lampstand, that thing is going to be quite heavy. And not only is it very heavy, but gold is also very malleable, so it bends very easily. So you have to be very careful when handling it, because it'll dent real quickly. If you bang it into anything, any other metal, you're probably going to end up causing some kind of trouble when you bang it into anything else you bump around in when you're carrying that thing around and getting the hooks into it. It even describes the hooks being made of gold, which is a surprise, because it seems like if you're carrying something heavy, you wouldn't want to put it on gold, because it would bend the gold as you were, and not referring to the wood coated in gold, but the actual loops on the side of the ark. Of course, there's people who say that the ark itself didn't weigh. That it almost floated, so that it wouldn't have mattered. They would have only been using the sticks to guide it where it was going, not necessarily actually bear the weight of it. And of course, that's neither here nor there. I don't see any direct evidence to that. Some would say that when it crossed into Israel, that it floated over the water, which is some people would trace that to be why Yeshua was walking on water when Peter saw him, because he was literally being the living Torah, as in that which is contained inside of the ark, the testimony that's given in the ark. He's the living example of that. All right, well, let's move on to 26, because like I said, with these kids taking a nap, I got to be quick. Moreover, you shall make the curtains about. Oh, wait. Let me take a break real quick and go into one thing. It was real hard for me to remember for a long time what the furniture of the tabernacle was, which that's what we're reading about. We're reading about the furniture of the tabernacle, or we're reading about the lampstand, the table of showbread, the altar of incense, these things that are inside the holy place, and then inside the most holy place. It took me a long time to remember them until I realized that it was analogous to what's in your own head. Your head is the holy place, and then the most holy place. The table of showbread has crowns on it, and you have crowns on your mouth, which are your teeth, and they had to put the little crowns around the edge of the table of showbread. And of course, we do not live by bread alone, but by every word from the mouth of God. The menorah is the one source of light. It's got 7 candlesticks on it. There's 7. It even looks like an upside down rainbow, you might say. 7 colors of the rainbow. Your eyes see the 7 colors of the electromagnetic spectrum that we can see as visible light. The lampstand is sitting on a hexagram, which is actually the shape of the rods inside your eye that receive and refract color, because the hexagram is also the shape of all the snowflakes that fall down and the little frozen ice crystals in the atmosphere, which is why you can see the rainbow in general. When you see a rainbow, you're actually seeing the frozen ice crystals in the atmosphere reflecting and bending the light and showing you the 7 colors. And you have similar structures in your own eye. And then the lampstand is the source of light, and of course the eye is the lamp of the body. It's the place from which the light comes. And then you've got the altar of incense, which is where the, I guess I shouldn't point to the nose, I should really point up here, because the altar of incense is where the good smelling stuff was burnt. Your nose actually has got a lot of filter hairs through here, and then you've got your actual nerves up in through here that actually do your smelling for you. So technically you're smelling up in here, actually above the eyes, as opposed to in that nasal passage directly. You got a lot going on. There's a lot of little chambers in your head that the air is actually flowing through. And the altar of incense is the smell place in the head. So this is your smell place where you're doing your smelling at. Take it to the next step. Beyond there is the 3 bearers. He says here, collect blue and purple and scarlet. This is chapter 25:4. Collect blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen and goat's hair. There was a 3-layered barrier between the holy place and the most holy place. There's a 3-layer barrier in your skull between the part of your skull that's, where your head's at, and then where your brain's at. You've got the Terumah, the arachnid, and the piyamata, which are the 3 layers of separation between the lower and the upper area. All these things that we're going to see correspond to stuff that's inside your body. I personally believe it's meant to be a diorama of a person to either explain what it is that God, how God connects to us, because he's going to come and he says, I'm going to sit on my mercy seat, and from that mercy seat, I'm going to tell you what I want. Okay. Imagine the mercy seat as being the corpus callosum, which connects the two hemispheres of your brain. In fact, the word that we use to describe the cerebrum, there's no s sound in the Hebrew. You would say cherubim or cherubim. The two cherubim are each side here with their wings closed over one another. This is symbolic of your brain, which is two separate hemispheres closed over one another that connect together. And well, they just press into each other, and then at the bottom they actually connect through the corpus callosum, which would be the mercy seat. And God would sit here as frontlets between your eyes, telling you what you should do. This is the part of your brain where you actually do your conscious thinking. This is where the little part of you that actually is the pilot in your brain is actually right here. People in the early 1900s, even in the mid 1900s, if you were dealing with somebody who was extremely violent or incapable of controlling themselves, they would give them a lobotomy, where they actually take a metal implement and shove it above their eye up into their brain area up here, and they would take a little metal prod and they would just go up in there and just start cutting that brain matter to try to calm that person down, because in some people it would work with. Most people, though, would end up in different types of vegetative states. And for some doctors, that was better than insanely angry all the time. So they were using that process to try and treat, particularly people of extreme violence, and usually people who were pretty much incapable of rational, regular thought, and they just get up in there and they just start cutting. But this is the frontlets between your eyes, which is where the conscious part of your brain is, and they were literally, through surgery, affecting the consciousness of people, by messing with that part of their brain. Now we do a lot of that stuff chemically instead of doing it directly with surgery, but there's still neurologists who can tell you all that type of stuff. All right, let's continue. Chapter 26. Moreover, you shall make the tabernacle with 10 curtains of fine twined linen, and blue and purple and scarlet. There's the 3 layers, okay. With cherubims of cunning work shall you make them. The length of one curtain shall be 8 and 20 cubits, and the breadth of one curtain shall be 4 cubits, and every one of the curtains shall be one measure. Oh, one more thing. The dimensions of the Ark of the Covenant correspond to the phi ratio. If you ever heard of the golden mean or the golden rectangle, it corresponds to a first stage version of the phi ratio, which, excuse me, if you've ever seen that picture Leonardo da Vinci did where it's got the man with his arms stretched out and his feet stretched out, that shows how the human body lines up with the phi ratio also. And most things that are considered normal and beautiful in nature correspond to the phi ratio or the Fibonacci sequence. So apparently Moses knew this stuff, or at least God explained it to Moses at the time. And the dimensions of the ark correspond to that ratio. All right. The 5 curtains shall be coupled together one to another. The other 5 curtains shall be coupled one to another, and you shall make loops of blue upon the edge of one curtain, with the self edge in the coupling, and likewise shall you make the outermost edge of another curtain in the coupling of the second. 50 loops shall you make in one curtain, and 50 loops shall you make at the edge of a curtain that is in the coupling of the second, that the loops may take hold of one another, that you shall make 50 taches of gold, and couple the curtains together with the taches. And you shall make and it shall make one tabernacle. And you shall make curtains of goat's hair to be a covering for the tabernacle. 11 curtains shall you make. The length of one curtain shall be 30 cubits, and the breadth of one curtain 4 cubits. And 11 curtains shall be all of one measure. And you shall couple 5 curtains by themselves, and 6 curtains by themselves, and shall double the 6th curtain in the forefront of the tabernacle. And you shall make 50 loops on the edge of the one curtain, that is the outmost in the coupling, and 50 loops in the edge of the curtain, which is which coupleth with the second. And you shall make 50 taches of brass, and put the taches in loops, and couple the tent together, that it may be one. And the remnant, that is, the remnant of the curtains of the tent, and the half curtain that remains shall hang over the back side of the tabernacle, and a cubit on one side, and a cubit on the other side, and of that which remaineth is the length of the curtains of the tent, and it shall hang over the sides of the tabernacle on this side, and one on the other shall cover it. And you shall make a covering for the tent of ram skins dyed red, and a covering shall be also above that of badger skins. And you shall make boards with the tabernacle of shittim wood standing up. 10 cubits shall be the length of the board, and a cubit and a half shall be the breadth of the one board. 2 tenons shall there be in one board, set in order one against another. Thus shall thou make for all the boards of the tabernacle, and you shall make the boards of the tabernacle 20 boards on the one side facing southward. And you shall make 40 sockets of silver under the 20 boards, under the sockets under the one board for his 2 tenons, and 2 sockets under another board for his 2 tenons. And for the second side of the tabernacle on the north side there shall be 20 boards. And there are 40 sockets of silver, 2 sockets under one board, 2 sockets under another board. And for the sides of the tabernacle westward you shall make 6 boards. And the 6 boards shall you make the corners of the tabernacle in 2 sides. And they shall be coupled together beneath, and they shall be coupled together above the head of it unto one ring. Thus shall it be for them both. They shall be for the 2 corners. And they shall be 8 boards, and their sockets of silver 16 sockets, 2 sockets under one board, and 2 sockets under another board. And they shall make bars of shittim wood, 5 for the boards on the one side of the tabernacle, and 5 boards for the boards on the other side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the boards on the side of the tabernacle for the 2 sides westward. And the middle bar in the midst of the board shall reach from end to end. And you shall overlay the boards with gold, and make their rings of gold for places for the bars. And you shall overlay the bars with gold, and you shall rear up the tabernacle according to the fashion thereof, which was showed you on the mountain. And of course you might be wondering where they're getting all this gold from to do this work that they're doing. Well, they took that with them out of Egypt. They plundered Egypt when they left. Basically took the majority of the Egyptian wealth with them when they left, which I guess is fair payment for a long several generations in hard labor as slaves. And you shall make a veil of blue and purple and scarlet and fine twined linen of cunning work with cherubim shall it be made. I guess I shouldn't say that. I don't know if that's fair. I should simply say that that's what he told them to do. Yehovah told them to take it with them when they left. And you shall bring upon 4 pillars of shittim wood overlaid with gold, and their hooks shall be of gold upon the 4 sockets of silver. And you shall hang up the veil under the taches, that it may bringeth into thither within the veil of the ark of the testimony. And the veil shall be divided unto you between the holy place and the most holy. And you shall put the mercy seat upon the ark of the testimony and the most holy place. And you shall set the table within the veil, and the candlestick over against the table on the side of the tabernacle toward the south. And you shall put the table on the north side, and you shall make a hanging door for the door of the tent of blue and purple and scarlet and fine twined linen wrought with needlework. And you shall make for the hanging 5 pillars of shittim wood, and overlay them with gold, and their hooks shall be of gold. And you shall cast 5 sockets of brass for them. Okay, so that concludes chapter 26. You may have heard it kind of pass by real quick because there's so much information here in these descriptions, but some easy ways to remember: the coating on the outside of the tabernacle was badger skin, and some people say, well, badger's not clean, why would they use badger? And then it may have been giraffe skin, or some other people say it could have been dolphin skin. It's possibilities that are mentioned, but let's just say it was badger skin. Then below the badger skin you have the red dyed wool. Then you have the white linen, and then you have the work of the cherubims, the stenciled work that has the image of cherubims. Of course, it's an easy way to remember it. Outer layer of your body is covered in skin, which is dirty and covered in dead cells, and is just, you wash it off all the time trying to clean yourself, because it's the only way you can get clean is by literally washing the dead skin off of you and all the oil and the critters that are trapped in it. Below that you have the red of your blood. When you take back the red of your blood, you pull that red muscle mass out of the way, and what do you get? You have white bone, because all your muscles and flesh are stretched across your bones. And then if you actually crack your bones open inside, in this particularly within the tabernacle or the holy most holy place. You crack open the skull, and inside the skull is the meninge sac, or the meningeal sac, which is a clear kind of bag that your brain is sitting in, and that's what swells up and kills you if you get meningitis. But inside that meningeal sac, you can see the brain or the cherubim through it. So thus, you make a work of the cherubim on the inner layer. And then if you were to, of course, peel that back, you'd actually see the actual cherubim, or in this case, your brain. All right, chapter 27. And you shall make an altar of shittim wood 5 cubits long and 5 cubits broad. The altar shall be 4 square, and the height thereof shall be 3 cubits. And shall make the horns of it for the 4 corners thereof, and the horns shall be the same. You shall overlay it with brass. This is the altar of sacrifice. Okay, this is going to correspond to your gastrointestinal system. And shall make the horns of the 4 corners thereof. The horn shall be of the same, and you shall overlay it with brass. You shall make his pans to receive his ashes, and his shovels, and his basins, and his flesh hooks, his pans. All these vessels shall you make of brass. And you shall make for it a grate of network of brass. And upon the net shall you make 4 brazen rings, the 4 corners thereof. So this is a big barbecue pit, basically. And it has a big grate over the top of it, so you can cook the animals, and the fat and all will drip into the pit while it's cooking. And basically it's just like a modern grill has, the grill bars across the top of it to keep the food from falling in. That's exactly what he's describing here, is make the grill bars out of brass. All right, you shall put it, and the good thing about making it, of course, out of brass is it's a much harder metal. When the heat gets intense and it's cooking, the brass is not going to melt. Gold would get so malleable it would just melt away if you tried to make these things out of it. And you shall make for it the grate of a network of brass, and upon the net shall you make 4 brazen rings in the 4 corners. And you shall put it under the compass of the altar beneath, that the net may be even to the midst of the altar. And then you shall make staves for the altar, and staves of shittim wood, and overlay them with brass. And the stave shall be put into the rings, and the stave shall be put into the 2 sides of the altar to bear it. Hollow with boards shall you make it, as it was showed you in the mountain. So shall they make it, and they shall make for the court of the tabernacle the south side thereof. Let me check something. Tell you, using these, Lord, don't offer me no options here, phone. When using this technology, doing these recordings on the phone, I got to be careful not to turn off the microphone when I'm turning off the other things. So let me check and make sure that this thing is actually. Doing these recordings on the phone, I got to be careful not to turn off the microphone. Looks good. All right, here we go. So we've just seen the description of how to make the altar of or we're reading the description of how to make the altar. 20 pillars like that on the north side. Imagine it like your stomach or your gastrointestinal system, right? This altar is to always be burning. If you recall, Yeshua said to the Pharisees were like, you're out on the Sabbath day and you're picking grain in the field. You're violating the Sabbath. And of course, that's not true, because during a sabbatical year, everyone is allowed to glean from a field, and that's an entire year of Sabbath. So why would you not be able to do it on the day that is the Sabbath? It's forbidden in the Torah to use an implement to harvest on a Sabbath, but not to simply go out there and eat it. And he replies to him, he said, you probably think that the priests at the temple right now are violating the Sabbath. Or he says, have you not heard it, or have you not read that the priests in the temple violate the Sabbath and yet are guiltless? Even though they're out there, cutting up wood and putting big logs on the fire and cooking food, burning a blazing fire. They're not violating the Sabbath because what they're doing is not work. What they're doing is ministering to God and his people. That's not a problem. That's not them attempting to do something to benefit themselves or to build their own kingdom or something like that. So he said that to them because that's something that the priesthood has to do constantly, is keep that fire burning on that altar. All right. let's see. And 20 pillars there shall be make the sockets of the brass, and the hooks of the pillars, and their fillets shall be of silver. And likewise for the north side of the length there shall be hangings of 100 cubits long, and 20 pillars, and their 20 sockets of brass. The hooks of the pillars and their fillets of silver. By the way, by the time of the second temple, they had expanded this a lot, because this is not nearly big enough to support, 2-3 million people coming into Jerusalem to make a sacrifice. They had set up systems of just washing. There was so much blood being spilled near the altar that they had to have a whole system set up to wash away all the blood, because it was just, I'm not going to say gallons, it was, decaliters of blood, just piling up and piling up and piling up. And they would just constantly have this flow of water that would come in and wash the whole thing clean. And people would just be amazed at how it went from being a blood-soaked mess to just being clean stone, out there. Likewise, for the fourth side of the length, there shall be hangings of 100 cubits long, and 20 pillars, and there's 20 sockets of brass, the hooks, the pillars, and their fillets of silver. And for the breadth of the court of the west side shall there be a hanging of 50 cubits, their pillars 10, and their sockets 10, and the breadth of the court of the east side eastward shall be 50 cubits. The hangings of one side of the gate shall be 15 cubits. Let me see if I can double check this. Yeah, we're reading to 19. The hangings of the one side of the gate shall be about 15 cubits, their pillars 3, and their sockets 3, and on the other side shall be hangings 15 cubits, their pillars 3, and their sockets 3. And for the gate of the court shall be a hanging of 20 cubits of blue, and purple, and scarlet, fine twined linen, wrought with needlework, and their pillars shall be 4, and their sockets 4. And all the pillars round about the court shall be filleted with silver. Their hooks shall be of silver, and their sockets of brass. The length of the court shall be 100 cubits, and the breadth 50 everywhere, the height of 5 cubits of fine twined linen, and their sockets of brass. All the vessels of the tabernacle, in all the surface thereof, and all the pins thereof, and all the pins of the court shall be of brass. So we see 3 different metals being used. It's brass. Sometimes it's translated as copper. I think brass is actually copper mixed maybe with iron. I don't know. I'd have to check up on that. I'm on metallurgist, but there's copper, there's silver, and there's gold. Everything in the Holy of Holies, gold. The fine. When you take gold and hammer it into a fine thin sheet, it makes a mirror-like surface. It becomes like a mirror. So if you went into that Holy of Holies, you've got, excuse me, the Ark of the Covenant sitting inside a golden box, basically. And in that golden box, it would have been like a mirror all the way around. Whatever you looked in the top, you'd see the Ark. You looked in the back, you'd see the Ark. Whenever you looked in the side, you'd see the Ark. The only place it wasn't was where you actually walked in through the curtain. So everything faced in on that Ark and created the illusion of infinite space. If you've ever looked at a mirror, and then across is another mirror, and you look into them, and they just keep going and going. It gives the illusion of infinite space. So that may have been intentional. I don't know. Without seeing this thing, it's hard to imagine exactly all of the visual lessons that may have been expressed in just seeing this. Some people would say the Ark of the Covenant, it was Ralph Messer had a guy in his congregation who was an electrical engineer. And he said from the way they described it, it sounded like the Ark of the Covenant would act as a capacitor, or that's a storage, or bronze. Yeah, it's Bronze Age material, exactly. The guy that was a part of the congregation said that it sounded like the way you build a capacitor, which is a container for an electric charge, that when you touch it, it instantly discharges, right? So you'd put this metal box inside a metal box, or a Faraday cage is what we call that now, and then you put this cover over the top of it, and the desert wind would blow across it, and it would generate a lot of static electricity as the dry desert winds blowing across this thing constantly. And that box would actually concentrate that electrical charge, even to the point that when the priest would go in, or the high priest would go into the presence of the Ark of the Covenant, he would have to have excuse me, a chain of pomegranates and bells that were hanging off of him. And the guy that was the electrical engineer even suggested that chain may have literally been a grounding structure And he had to wear the ephod and wear his linen cloak and all that, and that it may have literally been a ground to make it that when he got in there, it did not shock him and kill him when he stepped in it. And it allowed him to become grounded to it first, and then he could enter into it safely. And of course, that's all just speculation. That's like I said, that's just neither here nor there. It's just, without being able to see this thing firsthand, of course, all we got is this cold description. And if you read the Mishnah, they do a lot more showing how they actually made this. Like, they have diagrams in the Mishnah and stuff like that. And you can look all that up online. But they show diagrams of how it was made, and you could see there's plenty of religious organizations that have made diagrams and examples of it. And you could just imagine that if you could see it as it was, that there's a lesson in it. The one that I believe from the outset of it, of course, is I think of the Levites like white blood cells in the body. They keep the non-invited invaders away. When something comes in the body, white blood cell tags it and then attacks it. They put a tag on it and say, you don't belong here. Actually, they say, are you supposed to be here? And then if the thing can't answer in the appropriate way, they tag it and they bag it and they get rid of it. They kill it and get rid of it. If they can't kill it, they'll literally kill themselves wrapped around it and just expel it from the body. Same concept with the tabernacle. The tabernacle, the priestly garments themselves are literally white garments, just like a white blood cell is a white blood cell. The Levites were walking around wearing these white garments, right? So they defended it. They kept it clean. They would allow people in, but only if they had the appropriate business to do there. And you see a lot of the way that Yehovah describes Israel. He talks about her not only like she's a woman, but like it's one living thing. If you recall, Paul says, everybody's not the eye, everybody's not the hand. Talking about the church. Well, it's the concept of the way God talks about Israel, like she's one entity. There's not, it's not one person that makes up Israel, but Israel is one person in his eyes. It is the bride. It is the way that a bride, when she's with her husband, becomes like her husband over time. She conforms to him. Israel is supposed to be like the living embodiment of Yehovah on the earth, because his bride conforms to him, and when people see his bride, they should see him. Same concept in the church. If Christ dwells in you, then when people who see you, they should see Christ. And that's what they're supposed to see. They're not supposed to see you. They're not supposed to hear your opinions. They're not supposed to hear what you think or you're interested in. They're supposed to hear what Yeshua said and what his instructions or his Haggadah were for his disciples. Now, you can take that to the next step and say, well, if Yeshua is the living word, and all that Yeshua did, to quote him, he said, I don't speak the words that I have. I speak the words given to me by my Father in heaven, which means to say he's actually just taking you right back to the beginning, which is the words coming out of your mouth, the thoughts coming through your head, the actions that you do should all just be a reflection of what Yehovah wants, which, by the way, is the Greek definition of prayer. Prosykomai in the Greek means to exchange wishes, as in I give my wishes up to God, and he gives me his wishes that I might do them. Because, as I'm sure you've probably heard before, if you go praying for things that are not what God would want, why would you expect him to give them to you? Because the only thing you're ever going to ask for is the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. That's the only things people know how to ask for. Everything that corresponds to that is something sinful. We have to ask for God's will if we really want to see, the mountains move, et cetera, because we need to want his will in our lives. All right, let's move on to the, my goodness. Let's move on to 1 Kings 12 through 26. Or actually, we'll just go 1 Kings 5:12 to 6:13. 1 Kings 5:12 to 6:13. And Yehovah gave Solomon wisdom as he promised him. Okay, we're going to see a description of the Temple of Solomon, probably. And there was peace between Hiram This is Hiram Abif, by the way, the famous founding father of the Masonic order. If you ever met any Masons, Hiram Abif is one of their big progenitor ideas behind it. And Solomon, and they made a league together. Now, Hiram is the king of Tyre. His, great-great-granddaughter is Jezebel, and his great-great-great-great-granddaughter is Athaliah, who were some of the most evil women to ever bless the pages of the Holy Bible. We all know Jezebel's bad because everybody, she got a Jezebel spirit. You got a Jezebel spirit. You hear that a lot. But let me tell you, she ain't nothing compared to her daughter, Athaliah. Athaliah didn't just control men. Athaliah just killed them and got them out of her way. So just, you ever take some time to learn about Joash and Athaliah. In fact, the last Torah portions, half Torah, was mentioning Athaliah and Joash. Let's see here. And King Solomon raised a levy out of Israel, and the levy was 30,000 men. All right, so he conscripted 30,000 men. Let's see if that's in the English. I'm pretty sure that's what levy means. Literally, he just drafted them. But let's see. It says levy here is mach. And then the Strongs, that means labor band, a labor gang, a slave gang, gang overseers, forced servitude, serfdom, tribute, enforced payment. Yeah, so he conscripted 30,000 men to begin this project, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of workmen. And he set them to Lebanon, 10,000 a month by courses. A month they were in Lebanon and 2 months at home, and Adoniram was over the levy, so he was the man in charge of all these 30,000 men. And Solomon had 70,010 that bear burdens, and 70,000 hewers in the mountains, beside the chief of Solomon's officers, which were over the work, 3,300, which ruled over the people that wrought in the work. And the king commanded that they brought great stones, costly stones, and hewn stones, and laid the foundation of the house. And Solomon's builders and Hiram's builders did hew them, and as stone squarers, so they prepared timber and stones to build the house. Now, in the last Torah portion, we heard God say, when you build an altar, don't build it out of hewn stone. Solomon going to build him a whole house out of hewn stone to put him in. All right, 1 Kings 6. And it came to pass in 480th year after the children of Israel were come out of the land of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month of Ziph, which is the 2nd month, that he began to build the house of Jehovah. Remember, he didn't design it. This is Hiram Abif did this design, and Hiram built temples of Baal. That was one of his calling cards. He was a great mason and builder of Baal temple. The Baal of Tyre is Hercules. Remember, Jezebel came from Tyre, the princess who brought Baal worship into Israel. Then, of course, Solomon builds this temple to Jehovah and then fills it with every type of Baal you can imagine, right? And the house which King Solomon built for Jehovah, and the length thereof was 60 cubits, and the breadth thereof is 20 cubits, and the height thereof is 30 cubits. And the porch before the temple of the house is 20 cubits, and was the length thereof according to the breadth of the house, and 10 cubits was the breadth thereof before the house. And for the house he made windows of narrow lights, and against the wall of the house he built chambers round about, against the walls of the house round about, both the temple and of the oracle. And he made chambers round about. Let's see what this oracle is. I wonder where they're referring to it, what this English translation of oracle is. Debir? I wonder if that has anything to do with the De Beer jewel family. Debir. The inmost recess, adytum of Solomon's temple, elsewhere called this the Araculum, Araculi Sedes from the Vulgate. But it can be hardly be doubted, but it's called the hinder part, the western side, as it had been rightly observed, Debir, of a town in the tribe of Judah, elsewhere called Kirjath Sephir. The innermost, the Holy of Holies, the innermost room of the temple of the tabernacle. Okay, so they probably called it an oracle because that's where God would have spoken from. Because when you think oracle, I think like the Oracle of Delphi, which, was a prophetess who gave prophecies to whoever would come and hear. Some were sent for, and some just came because they wanted to know what their future and their fortune was from the oracle of Delphi. All right, and against the wall of the house, the chambers round about, against the wall of the house and round about, both of the temple and of the oracle, he made chambers round about. And the nethermost chamber was 5 cubits broad, and the middle was 6 cubits broad, and the third was 7 cubits broad. For within the wall of the house he made narrow rest round about, and the beam should not be fastened, that the beam should not be fastened to the walls. And the house, when it was in building, was built of stone made ready before it was brought thither, so that there may be neither heard hammer nor axe or any tool of iron heard in the house while it was building, because that was kind of one of the tricks. Like, if you build me a house, I don't want to hear the sound of hammers. So it's like, oh, okay, we'll get all the parts ready off site, then we'll bring them in there and assemble them, as opposed to, don't build me a house out of hewn stone. Always a workaround with these guys. And then he built a chamber against all the house 5 cubits high, and they rested on the house with the timber of cedar. And the word of Jehovah came to Solomon, saying, concerning this house which you are building, if you will walk in my statutes, this is a conditional statement. This is an if-then statement. He says, if you will walk in my statutes and execute my judgments and keep all my commandments to walk in them, then I will perform my word with you, which I spake unto David your father. And I will dwell among the children of Israel, and will not forsake my people Israel. So Solomon built the house and finished it. So Jehovah is basically saying the house don't mean nothing. He's like, basically, I've dwelled in a tent with the people this whole time. What's the big deal? Why are you going to do this? Because you remember David wanted to build him a house. He's like, no, you're not going. You don't build me a house. Your hands are covered in blood. I don't want you to build me a house. But your son will. Or actually says another will, which is assumed to be Solomon, but hey, maybe it's Yeshua building that house of flesh for him to dwell in. I like to think of it that way sometimes. But Solomon built this typical Baal temple from stone with the best builder in stone there was at the time, which was Hiram-Abith, the king of Tyre, whose god was Hercules, who had built many temples for him. And there's plenty of other temples found in the Middle East in this region that correspond to these same type of measurements and proportions that are there at this described here. But Jehovah basically said, look, all I care about you doing is doing what I say. Just obey me, and everything else will be fine, and I'll dwell with my people. I just want you to walk in my statutes. And it's interesting, too, that he says this to Solomon, and this, of course, this is just my opinion. In 1 Samuel, Jehovah says to the people, like Samuel, the people are like, give us a king so that we can deal with these Philistines. Give us a king like the pagans have. And Samuel's like, that's retarded. No, we're not going to get a king. If you have a king, he'll take the best of your land. He'll take the best of your crops. He'll take your sons and make them run before his chariots. He'll take your daughters and put buns in their ovens. He'll make them his bakers. That's the way it says. Basically, he'll take whichever ones he wants and marry them and do whatever he wants with them, make them live as his palace slave girls, etc. He's like, that's the worst idea you ever had, was to put a human king over you. Your king is Jehovah. End of story. And they're like, give us a king. We want a human king. So Samuel goes and talks to Jehovah, and he's like, these people are trying to get a king. And Jehovah's like, listen, Samuel, they're not protesting you. You aren't the problem in their eyes. I'm the problem. I'm the one they're insulting. Let them have a king. And of course, who did they choose? They chose Saul. Why did they choose Saul? Because he was head and shoulders taller than every other man in Israel. Every person looked at him and said, that is the biggest, baddest man I have ever seen. Nobody will dare stand up to him. He's a powerful warrior, has a huge build, and he was actually a pretty decent king, actually, as it went, before he kind of went crazy and messed around with David. But he, instead of levying taxes and all that, he actually had an army of about 500 men, and he relied on donations from wealthy Israelites to maintain his army and to do the fighting. But of course, as time went on, you need more money, you need more men, you need more power. And when David came in, David didn't play. David set up taxes. He set up an empire in Israel. That's when the empire of Israel was born. David conquered the land all the way out east of Jerusalem, all the way over to Babylon. That was all part of David's possession, according to what the rabbis say today. He made deals with the kingdoms around him, and minus a few Bathsheba-ish, stories we hear, he really wasn't that bad compared to some of the other kings of Israel. In fact, he's considered one of the 3 righteous kings to ever ruled over Israel. But his son Solomon was a man who was a child born of the woman who he had killed the father of, the woman David had killed the husband of to get her. He was probably not the first choice to be king, but Bathsheba came to him and said, "Didn't you tell me our son was going to be king?" And then David made him king, even though I think his name is Adonai or something like that. So I think it's like Adonai, but it's similar to that. His other older, much stronger and more popular sons were vying for the throne at the time, and Adonai had basically declared himself to be king. And then King David said, "No, Solomon's going to be king." And then there was a civil war of sorts. So needless to say, here comes the political intrigue. Here comes the vying for power. Here comes, the king who's going to take them and saddle them with debts. And here comes Solomon, who literally does just about anything to keep stability in the kingdom. He expands it. He increases the taxes. And he also makes confederations and deals with pretty much every other kingdom around. He was a great, the way the scripture describe him is that he was the most intelligent man to ever live. It says wisdom, but let's face it, it's intelligence that he had. Wisdom would tell you, don't walk contrary to God, or it's going to bite you in the end. Intelligence says, how can I figure out how to manipulate this system to serve me and my goals? That's intelligence. So he makes deals with everybody, marries a princess from every tribe, tongue, and nation within probably, I don't know, 1,000, I shouldn't say 1,000, maybe 500-mile radius of Israel. He's got him a wife or a concubine from every one of them tribes. He takes all their gods, puts them inside his temple, and everything's cool. And then Jehovah comes to him one night and he's like, "I'm taking it all from you. I'm going to leave you with Judah because I love David." And that's it. And then his son Rehoboam gets into conflict with Jeroboam, who's one of his generals, and you see the division of Israel into 2 different nations, which is Judah and Israel. And that's when the drama starts, so to speak. So, walk contrary to Jehovah, and it doesn't take long for the drama to start. Pick a king, and it don't take long for drama to start. I think that's the lesson to get here. But anyways, so he says to Solomon, and here we are back to 1 Kings 6:12, "Concerning this house which you are building, if you will walk in my statutes," and he says, this is all I want you to know, and it says, "Concerning this house which you are building." And they added in the English "concerning." It really just says, "This house which you are building," like he's referring to it. He said, "If you will walk in my statutes, execute my judgments, and will keep the commandments to walk in them, then I will perform my word with you, which I spoke to David your father." So that's all he had to say about the temple. This is a magnificent, amazing, super expensive temple that was being built. He's like, "Just do what I tell you, and everything will be fine." He doesn't even say anything about the temple. All right, so Solomon built the house and finished it. And he built the walls of the house within the boards of cedar, both the floor of the house and the walls of the ceiling. He covered them on the inside with wood and covered the floor of the house with planks of fir. And he built 20 cubits on the sides of the house, both the floors and the walls and the boards of cedar. He built them for it within, even for the oracle, even for the most holy place. And the house, that is, the temple before it, was 40 cubits long, and the cedar of the house within it was carved with knops and open flowers, all with cedar. There was no stone seen. So he made sure to coat the entire inside of the stone building with wood. So it looked like it had been made from wood from the inside. And the oracle in the forepart was 20 cubits in length and 20 cubits in width and breadth, 20 cubits in height thereof. And it was overlaid with pure gold,
so that it covered the altar, which was of cedar. So Solomon overlaid the house within with pure gold. So the entire inside was pure gold, right? And he finished all the house, and also the whole altar that was by the oracle. He overlaid it with gold, and within the oracle he made 2 cherubims of olive tree, each 10 cubits high. So where they had been a lot smaller before, 10 cubit is roughly the length from your pit of your elbow to the tip of your finger, and the royal cubit was the length of Pharaoh's, this on Pharaoh at the time, because, you know, everything's measured from Pharaoh. So that's where the idea of a cubit comes from. So let's just say this is, I don't know, 15 and a half to 16 inches, some probably like 15 and a half inches. Times that by 10, that's 150 inches tall. That's 10 feet plus 2 feet plus 6 inches. So this is 12'6" angel, right, that they had built. And of course these cherub probably look like sphinxes from Egypt, because those would have the face of a man, the body of a lion, the wings of an eagle, and possibly the hooves of a bull, which Ezekiel mentions that kind of thing too. So the height of one cherub was 10 cubits, and the other as it was with the other cherub. And he set the cherubims within the inner house, and they stretched forth the wings of the cherubim, so that the wings of one touched the one wall, and the wings of the other touched the other wall, and their wings touched one another in the midst of the house. This kind of reminds me of, if you recall, the movie The Never-Ending Story. If you ever watched the movie The Never-Ending Story, the boy goes and he has to cross between 2 female type of sphinxes, which look like exactly what we're seeing here, and he had to walk between them to enter into this test that he had to go through. Sounds like this is where they got that image from, that their wings would have literally crossed over and touched the wall that the other one was in front of. So you'd have to walk under their wings to walk in, right? To give you the sense of the ominous sense of the greatness of the otherworldly things that you were becoming involved with. And he carved all the walls of the house round about with carved figures of cherubim and palm trees and open flowers within and without. And the floor of the house overlaid with gold within and without. And the entering the oracle, he made the doors of olive tree. The lintel and the side posts were a 5th part of the wall. 2 doors were olive wood. And he carved upon them carvings of cherubims and palm trees and open flowers, and overlaid them in gold, and spread gold upon the cherubim upon the palm trees. And so he made for the door of the temple a post of olive tree, a 4th part of the wall. And the 2 doors were a fir tree, and the 2 leaves of the one door were folding, and the 2 leaves of the other door were folding. And he carved thereon cherubims and palm trees and open flowers, and covered them with gold upon a fitted work. He built the inner court with 3 rows of hewn stone and a row of cedar beams. And in the 4th year was the foundation of the house of Jehovah laid in the Mount Ziph. In the 11th year, in the month of Bul, which is the 8th month, was the house finished throughout all the parts thereof, and according to all the fashion of it. So was he 7 years in building it. I wonder if he let them get off for Sukkot while they were building this, or if he just kept them building right through. I wonder. Cecil asked question. That would make sense also. Didn't the priestly garments have gold woven into them? I think, no, the high priestly garment had the ephod, which was gold and had stones that were supposed to be the symbolic of the 12 different tribes, 12 different stones, and that's kind of repeated in Revelation. Also on each shoulder of the high priest there was the Umium and the Thummim, which was the binary communication method to talk to Jehovah. Basically, they'd ask God a yes-no question, and he'd either light up one for yes or one for no, which is binary communication. That's a 0 or a 1, a positive or negative response, right? So that was an interesting form of communication that Jehovah used with the high priest, which is to give him a yes, or actually I should probably a yes on the right side and a no on the left side. This is where the modern, I got an angel on this shoulder and a devil on this shoulder comes from, because one of them is yes and the other one is no, depending on which one would light up. And that's called the Ummim and the Thummim, if you are interested in looking those up.
And of course, some of this stuff is just Mishnah and tradition. It's not. You're not going to actually find it in the written Torah. But I tend to believe it. All right, so let's go over to Hebrews 8. This is Hebrews 8. We're going to read Hebrews 8, 9, and 10. It's been my experience that Hebrews is about the hardest to understand document, because from where I'm sitting, this thing is written for a very synagogued Pharisee to read this and consider what's being said, because there's one thing you can be guaranteed: if you go to a synagogue, you're going to see a lot of people arguing about a lot of things. There's no one uniform way of transmitting information. There's the halakha, which is the walk that the Pharisees would teach, which is all the laws that have been agreed upon, that would have been the Mishnah or the oral Torah, that must be done to meet the mitzvahs, which are the actual commandments and orders that Yehovah has for his people. And then there's the Haggadah, which is the different interpretations from any different rabbi on why he thinks that these things are like they are. Halakha has to be followed. Haggadah is just whoever your teacher is, those are his opinions, and you can, make them, carry them on forever for him if you want, or you could just not. It's up to you. All right, so Hebrews 8. Now, the things which we've spoken, this is the sum. So that's the adding together and equal. That's a sum, right? We have such a high priest who is set on the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens. Now, if the throne on the earth is the mercy seat, what's on the right hand of the mercy seat is one of the cherubim, right? Okay. A minister of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle, which Yehovah pitched and not man. So he's saying that we're talking about what's in the heavenlies. This is not something that Yehovah made. Now, the question is he talking about what's inside of you, or is he talking about what's in the heavens? Or is he telling you that what's in the heavens is what's inside of you? Because we have 12 constellations that we consider to be the 12 constellations. There's 24 elders, or they're called the deacons, the deckhands, which is deacon, of course, is a word you hear in church, right? It's a person who helps you get you to where you're going. Like the deacon will help you find your seat, right? Because the deacons are the stars that are between the constellations that tell you specifically what time of year you're in and stuff like that. Your brain has 12 neural connections that run down one half and cross, like your left eye and your right brain work together, your right eye and your left brain work together. Even though this eye is closer to this brain and this eye is closer to this half of the brain, they cross over and go to the other one. Okay, they run a longer route to get to the other side. Your brain has 12 neurofiber connections that run out of each hemisphere down into your body to allow you to control your body, and they cross over each other to get there. Okay. So, if there's 12 disciples, 12 tribes of Israel, we're saying something about what's actually inside of you. Okay. For the high priest is ordained to offer gifts and sacrifices. Wherefore, it is of necessity that this man have somewhat also to offer. So he says, the high priest is the guy who has to go into the most holy place and to offer these sacrifices. It's necessary that he have something also to offer. So if he's going to go in there, he better not go empty-handed, right? Don't show up to Yehovah empty-handed. Hebrews 8. For if he were on earth, he should not be a priest, seeing that there are priests that offer gifts according to the law. Okay, well, yes, there are priests that offer gifts, yes. So basically they're saying at the time Yeshua was here, he was not a priest, because there were already priests doing their jobs, offering things. Okay, I can deal with that. Who serve unto the example and the shadow of heavenly things, as Moses was admonished of God when he was about to make the tabernacle. So God said, make it according to the way that I said, that I showed you. And they've jumped to say, well, that means he took Moses to heaven and showed him how he wants it from heaven. Well, I mean, Moses could just look up and see heaven, and God could just say, hey, I want it like this, I want like this pattern, that pattern, that pattern. That's how I want it, right? But some people will be like, no, he pulled him into another place, another reality with all these things. Well, I mean, that's possible, but couldn't he have just looked up? Let's see. Or he could have just taken a person's body and said, you've cut apart many bodies, Moses. You were a priest in Egypt for
I don't know, probably 25 years. I'm sure he prepared many people for burial in the Egyptian method, where they would chop people up and they'd gut them and eviscerate them and take their brain out through their nose with a hook, and they took their heart out, their liver out, their lungs out, and they set them in the different phylacteries and set them in. They take 7 phylacteries and put the 7 major organs in the 7 different phylacteries. Even though they did not put the brain in one, I think they considered that to be a cooler for cooling you off. It's strange they'd think that. Like, it seems like if you had a person got a head injury and they lived through it, that they'd know that person was wacky afterwards, because that's where they were doing their thinking at. But they probably just thought you're a spirit, dwelling in flesh, that those things didn't affect. But who hath attained a more excellent ministry, by how much also he is a mediator of a better covenant, which is established upon better promises. Yes, I agree. That is to say, we have not got to the Mount Sinai golden calf incident yet in our reading, but it's coming. And when that happens, the covenant that was meant to happen gets voided, and you get the establishment of the Levitical priesthood. Why should I say? Levitical priesthood, or I should really say the Levitical slave tribe. They become slaves of the high priest. Yehovah takes the Levites in lieu of taking the firstborn of Israel. So initially, it's supposed to be the firstborn of Israel, supposed to be the priest. Every tribe is supposed to be supplying priests that are all working on behalf of the high priest, so that he can fulfill his duty. Excuse me. For if that first covenant had been faultless, then should no place have been sought for a second. Well, shall we say, had they been faultless in their execution of the first one, there would have been no need to look for a second one. For finding fault with them, well, there you go. He said, Behold, the days come, says Jehovah, when I will make a covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them out by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, says Jehovah. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says Jehovah. I will put my laws in their minds and write them in their hearts, and I will be to them a God, and they shall be to me a people. And they shall not teach every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for all shall know me, from the least to the greatest. For I will be merciful to their unrighteousness and their sin and their iniquities, and I will remember them no more. In that he says, A new covenant he hath made, the first old. Now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away. Okay, you got to understand. He makes statements in the Torah saying, and through the prophets, that because you have walked contrary to me, there's going to be punishments. There's going to be famine. There's going to be bloodshed. He said, I'll send the beast to the field. That's the different kingdoms of the world. I'll send the sword. That's war. I'll send the beasts of the field. When they come, they also take you and make you a slave. That's part of what they do. And I'll send famine, which I'll starve you to death, literally, right? So he's warned them, when you do this, I'm gonna let you become slaves in other nations. But while you're slaves in those other nations, you're going to declare my glory to those nations until one day, and this is Isaiah 66, until one day, Shema, everybody, hear and obey, right? Isaiah 66, one day, when you have proclaimed my glory enough among them, they will take you and they will bring you back to Yehovah in a clean vessel, like a gift that's brought to Yehovah, on chariots and horses and all these methods of transportation. They will send you back to Yehovah to go be his people, because that's where you're supposed to be. And it's not just going to be the lost. It's not just going to be the lost sheep of Israel. It's going to be every person who saw the glory of Yehovah and desired to be with him and to be his priest. Because those will be the people who have the law written on their hearts, and the people who they didn't need to learn what the Torah was, because they were already doing it. They were already functioning in the way that they describe it in the Chabad or the modern Orthodox Judaism. They say he is above. When you're above the Torah, it means you're not under it, as in you have to keep trying to learn the way you're supposed to do it. You're above it in the sense that everything you do is already in accordance with the way it should be.
You're not being an evil person. There's something about you that is so inherently good that you don't violate God's rule. And if you find out a rule that you didn't know, you certainly aren't going to violate it because you love God too much. You're not going to do that.
All right, he says, a new covenant hath he made, the first old, now which decayeth and waxes old is ready to vanish away. Okay, so that the waxing away and vanishing away, by the way, is the Levitical. It's not that the law for priesthood has changed, but that the priesthood itself has changed. It's going back to the firstborn, except now it's not just the first physically born, it's those who are born of the Spirit, because when you're born of the Spirit, you become a firstborn, who is then liable for the responsibility of the priesthood. You know, a lot of people are like, I'm born again, I've been saved. Well, that just means you have to do your work. That just means you're working. You've been born again unto a job and a purpose. You know, it's not just a free ride. He's got stuff for you to do. It's like we're keeping these these foster children, and they may eventually become orphans. So far, that hasn't happened. It'll just take time, and we'll see if their family does what they should do to correct themselves. And if they do, we'll have to surrender these children, and we'll have no choice in that. And all we could have done is planted seeds in their life, and maybe one day they'll grow into believers. You know, or we'll be allowed to keep them, and they'll become our children, and they'll receive the adoption, which is what we all, you know, kind of hope for, to receive the adoption. All right, Hebrews 9.
Then verily, the first covenant had also ordinances of divine service and a worldly sanctuary. For there was a tabernacle made, the first, wherein was the candlestick, well, this is what we heard about today, and the table and the showbread, which is called the sanctuary. So that's the altar of incense, the candlestick, which is the lampstand. Candlestick's a pour. They didn't put candles in there. It's a lamp with oil in it. And the table of the showbread, right? Which is called the sanctuary. And after the second veil, the tabernacle, which is called the holiest of all. Okay, which had the golden censer and the ark of the covenant overlaid round with gold, wherein was the golden pot that had the manna, and that's the manna they collected and kept in the ephod, and Aaron's rod that had budded, and it budded an almond, right, and made an almond, and the table, and the tables of the covenant. So that's the 10 Commandments, the 10 words, the 2 tables of stone. And over it the cherubims of glory shadowing the mercy seat, of which we cannot now speak particularly, because we don't know what they look like, because the Ark of the Covenant was gone, and currently it still is. Now, I've heard Michael Rood said on his show that the one of the head rabbis in Israel said that the Ark of the Covenant its location was known, and the Catholic Church will tell you it's known. They'll tell you it's in an Ethiopian Coptic church today, waiting for its time to be used again. And of course, then they say that Ron Wyatt found it in Israel. And maybe he did. I don't know. They don't tell me anything. Now these things that were thus ordained, the priest went also into the first tabernacle, accomplishing the service of Elohim. But into the second went the high priest alone, once a year, not without blood, which he offered for himself and for the heirs of the people. So that's Yom Kippur. The Holy Ghost, this satisfying that the way into the holiest of all was not yet made manifest, while as the first tabernacle was yet standing. So at that time, in the first tabernacle, that even though he performed this ritual, it did not bring a termination. And the way the word is propitiation. One of the synonyms is forbearance for that. And to be forbeared, it doesn't mean you're forgiven. It just means they'll keep working with you. So you can imagine it where Jehovah's saying, listen, it ain't time yet to bring an end to all the sin in the world. I'm going to keep working with you. Just keep doing what I've told you to do, right? Which was the figure for the time then present, in which were offered both gifts and sacrifices that could not make him that did the service perfect as pertaining to the conscience. Okay, so like I said, there's nothing about these sacrifices that somehow made you a perfect person. That's not what they do. Which stood only in meats and drinks and diverse washings and
and carnal ordinances imposed on them upon the time of Reformation. So he says, they washed their hands, they made the offerings, they did all these things. It didn't make them perfect people. It's just an obedience to what was told to them. But Yeshua, being come and high priest of good things to come, by a greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this building. Well, what hands did make the tabernacle, which is Jehovah's hands, and what did he build it out of? Flesh and bone and blood. That's what he built the tabernacle out of. He don't live in buildings built by human hands. He lives in buildings he builds himself, and only he can build this one. Don't get me wrong, humans are trying to build their own humans, but I got a feeling it ain't going to work out well. Neither by the blood of goats or calves, but by his own blood he entered in once into the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for us. So saying at this point that he became high priest, it is now time to put an end to sin in the world. Okay? For if the blood of bulls and goats and the ashes of a heifer sprinkling the unclean, sanctifying to the purifying of the flesh, that by the way is soap, that's soapy water. They kept the soapy water, the water of cleanliness that they made from the red heifer, that was soapy water that was kept in the laver of washing. Sanctifying to the purifying of flesh, how much more shall the blood of Yeshua, who through the eternal Spirit offer himself without spot to Elohim, purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living God. So he's saying at the point that he's done that, he has now shown what the point of that offering had been from the beginning. And the point of the offering was that when he showed up and sacrificed his own life to offer himself up, that is how we're going to make it through. We're going to have to offer ourselves up as living sacrifices daily. It says you have to die to yourself daily, right? Take up your cross and follow me. These are all things that are in the New Testament. Because, or the Brit Hadashah, because it is the only way in which you're going to be able to live a life without sin. If we're going to put an end to sin, you're going to have to become a living sacrifice. All right, so, and for this cause, he is the mediator of this new or renewed covenant, that by means of death, for the redemption of the transgressions that were under the first testament, they which are called might receive the promise of eternal inheritance. Okay. Here we go again. Death to self will render you the ability to receive the eternal inheritance, right? So this is why Paul says a Jew is not one who is one outwardly, but one who is of the heart, which is to say, if your desire is to do what Jehovah wants, you a Jew. Go be a Jew. Be one of his priests. All right. And for this cause, and for where a testament is, there must also be the necessary death of the testator. So it's like saying, if you're going to embrace this testament, you're going to have to die. The who you were, it must die to give life to the new, which is the one who is in obedience to Jehovah. And not just outwardly, but inwardly. That's why Yeshua said to him, he's like, you guys are doing a great job keeping the outward law. Fabulous. Have you ever looked on a woman and lusted after her? And then, of course, every dude around him said, yes, but don't tell my wife. And then he's like, then you've already committed adultery with her in your heart. And every dude's like, how can I not do what is a part of that's my flesh, man. I can't even stop it. He's like, you must learn to even defeat that is in you. You must literally learn to kill the flesh that you are built of, and to reform it and reshape it into something holy. Which is not easy, by the way, not in any way, shape, or form, because it makes you. We've so long associated the animalistic part of being human with being human, that the idea of suddenly trying to divorce ourselves, because we're not that far. I mean, we got houses and TVs and cell phones, but most of the behavior that people exhibit, a psychologist, anthropologist, sociologist would say, yeah, I know animals that do exactly the same things. And there's no way to debate it, because it's true. There's lobsters who behave based on serotonin, social structures and hierarchies, because They have the same serotonin structure in their brains that we do. And we behave on recognition of our own social status and standing among one. Like Jehovah's like, look, I don't care. There's none of you that's above any other one of you. I'm not a respecter of persons. Everybody's the same to me. You all look the same to me. You all just Israel. Be Israel. Don't try to be you. Don't be the best that you can be, or whatever. Do be the best you can be, but don't try to be better than someone else. Don't let that be the reason that you're trying to do what's right. And if we could defeat that part of ourselves, we're no longer lobster people. We are more fully human than we had been. Unfortunately, most people will never be able to do that because it requires a great desire to kill who you are and kill what you've been taught by society and to kill the literal chemical drives that are pushing you, those quote unquote evolutionary urges, to kill them and to become above that, to literally become a heavenly being, right? To be above those things, when you will be fit to live in the heavens as opposed to living here on the earth. Which is why we anticipate a new heaven and a new earth, because there will still be earthly things going on in the future, but there will be certain rules that will not be. There will be no violation of those rules. In this Isaiah 66, it said everyone will celebrate the Sabbath, everyone will remember the new moons. That's the rules. That's part of what Yehovah has planned for the future and the new heaven and new earth. Okay, but there will be a separation according to the book of Revelation between those that live inside the holy city and those that live outside. Outside is weeping and gnashing of teeth. That's where people are stressed. That's where people are sad. That's where darkness is. That's where the people of the valley of Hinnom, where they sacrifice their children to the idols, that's where they'll be. But inside the city, dwelling with the light, because there's no need for the sun anymore, because Yehovah will be the light. That is where the people of Him will dwell with Him. But there'll still be a new heaven and a new earth, let's see here. For where there's testament, all right. And for a testimony is the force after men are dead. And it says after men are dead. Not after the man is dead. It says after men are dead. In other words, fellas, get used to the idea of dying to yourself to receive life. And then you can walk in this covenant, right? Otherwise, it is of no strength at all while the testator lives. So you can claim all you want until you have died to yourself, until you have stopped using your own faculties to decide what to do and instead do what Yehovah says in accordance with His word, then you're still alive. You have not died yet, because the creature, the fleshy monster that you are, is still alive and kicking. And until it's dead, the new life cannot live, right? What does Yeshua say? He said a seed has to die before it can become alive. Saying, this is the blood of the testament which Elohim hath enjoined unto you. Let's see. For when Moses had spoken every precept to all the people according to the law, he took the blood of calves and the blood of goats and with water and hyssop, and we read about that last week, and he sprinkled them with the scarlet wool and the hyssop, and sprinkled both the book, which is the covenant, and the people, saying, this is the blood of the testament which Elohim hath enjoined unto you. Moreover, he sprinkled with blood into the tabernacle and all the vessels. He splattered blood all over all of it, right? And almost all things are by the law purged with blood, and without shedding of blood is no remission. So he's like, right off the bat, he's cluing you in. Something's got to die. Something's got to die. Something's got to die, or things aren't going to change. I mean, this is life itself. Life feeds on life. You'll be like, wait a second, but death came in the world because of sin. Well, maybe death of humans, I guess, but it says right here, something's got to die and pay a price, even if it's you dying to pay a price. For Christ entered not into the holy place made with hands, which are the figures of what is true, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of Elohim for us. Nor yet that he should offer himself often, as high priest entereth in the holy place every year with the blood of others. For then must he often have suffered since the foundation of the world. But now once in the end of the world hath he appeared to put away, in the end of the world hath he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. And as it is appointed unto men once to die, but after this judgment. So, you must die, then you will, and it's not receive judgment, you'll be capable of judgment. Because, like Peter says, you'll judge angels. Well, you can't judge angels if you can't keep yourself from being a wild animal. So you have to die to yourself, then judgment. So, Yeshua was once offered to bear the sins of many, and unto them that look for him shall he appear the second time without sin unto salvation. So when we see him again, we will know that he is exactly what we should be shooting to be. Because he will appear to us with no sin. And he'll be like, look, there's no sin here. He's my idol. Well, I shouldn't say idol. I guess that's a bad word. He's the goal. He's the progenitor. He is the first begotten of the dead. Even though, let's look that up. Okay, let's see, first begotten. Can I spell begotten? There's a question. Of the dead. All right, here we go. All right, Revelation 1:5. And from Yeshua, who is the faithful witness, the firstborn from the dead, and the ruler of the kings of the earth, to whom he loves us and has freed us from the blood of our sins. And you're saying, well, that's right, he's the first begotten dead. No, wait a second. Elijah brought a kid back from the dead. Yeshua brought a man back. He brought Lazarus back from the dead. Why isn't Lazarus the first begotten dead? Because it's not talking about that kind of death. It's talking about the death to self, then the resurrection. He said, look at me, I'm going to tear this temple down. That's the one that man builds for himself, right? I'm going to tear down the life that I have. I'm going to rebuild it again in 3 days. And it's going to last forever. Because the new temple is going to be nothing but what Yehovah is dwelling here. And he does not die. He cannot die. Become a living vessel for him, and you cannot die. Because you were never alive. You have to be born before you can die. And if the creature that you were is turned away and destroyed, then he is living in you, and he cannot die. Therefore, you cannot die. Okay? So now you got to ask yourself the question, so am I physically going to get to resurrect? It says you will. The scriptures say yes. You will be given an incorruptible body, is the way it's described. There will be a resurrection of the dead, and you will be given an incorruptible body. Now you might be like, I'm not sure. Hold on. Well, even when Yeshua was on the cross and died on the cross, graves split open, and men who had been dead for a long time, who were holy men that people knew about, walked out of their graves and were walking around testifying about him to them. And that must have been wacky. Why weren't they the first begotten of the dead? They came back from the dead from who knows how long before. Didn't matter. That's not the type of death we're talking about. If it was, then they would meet the criteria. All right, let's read Hebrews 10. All right. For the law having a shadow of good things to come, and not the very image of these things, can never with those sacrifices which they offered year by year continually make the comers thereunto perfect. So it's like, look, instructions were given. We were incapable of understanding exactly what they meant. We see through a glass darkly, right? That's the phrase. We see through a glass darkly. We don't fully understand. Even modern rabbis today will tell you, all of the mitzvah don't even make sense. Some of the things you have to do. But you just do them because Yehovah said do them. So you just do them and you expect that it'll work out. Because that's all you can do. You just have to trust that he knew what was going on, and that's why he set these things in motion. We might be like, these are the craziest rules in the world. And yeah, it may be if the butterfly effect wasn't affecting the entire planet and cosmos all of the time. every little decision you make and action you take ripples out all around you and affects everything around you all the time. So even though you might be doing things that don't make sense to you, maybe the ripples will make sense, in 10 years later, when you said one day said something and suddenly it happened and you suddenly remembered, didn't I say that 10 years ago? How did that happen, Just something to think about. And then would they not have ceased to be offered, because that the worshippers once purged should have no more consciousness of sin. So he said, if those sacrifices could just wipe you clean and you just forgot that you had ever committed sin, why would you ever have to go back? Because you wouldn't commit sin anymore, right? Because you'd just be so clean that you would never even do it again. But in those sacrifices there is a remembrance again made of sins every year. So there's that idea of confessing to God that you've done what's wrong. If we come up at Yom Kippur and do that sacrifice on behalf of the nation, then we are literally saying to God, we know we have done wrong. Please continue to work with us. We'll try to do better. We'll do our best to do better. That's all you can do, because everybody knows we're not perfect. There's nobody that's perfect. And I'm going to say, maybe Yeshua knew this too, and that's why he pointed out the parts of people that weren't perfect, where he said, have you ever looked on a woman and lusted on her? And then every dude said, well, yes. And he's like, then you're already sinned. You never put a hand on her, you never touched her, you never did anything wrong, but you've sinned. What are you going to do about it? You're going to go apologize to Yehovah for being still an animal, even when you're doing, even if a camera was aimed at you all the time, it would never be able to say you did something wrong, because the internal camera, which only Yehovah and you share, has told you that you're a sinner. You know you are. Don't lie to yourself. You know you are. And if these rituals could have got you clean, they'd have got you clean. They're not about getting you clean. They're about moving along. All right, let's see. But in those sacrifices there is a remembrance made, for it is not possible that the blood of bulls and goats should take away sins. That's not what it does, okay? Wherefore, when he comes into the world, he says, sacrifice and offering you would not, but a body have you prepared me. Okay? Read that again, Hebrews 10:5. Wherefore, when he cometh into the world, he said, sacrifice and offering you would not, but a body have you prepared me. In burnt offerings and sacrifices for sin, you have no pleasure. Then said I, lo, I come. In the volume of the book it is written of me, to do your will, O Yehovah. So he's mentioning the prophecy that Isaiah mentioned, right? So he's saying, when I got here, the whole sacrificial system was messed up anyway, but I have my own body that I can sacrifice with. I have the real sacrifice, which is who I am. All right, above when he said, sacrifice and offering and burnt offerings and offerings for sin, you wouldest not, neither had any pleasure therein, which are offered by the law. So he's saying there's, in the prophecies of Isaiah, it says Isaiah 65, I believe. He says, I don't everything that you might as well be eating mice. You might as well be sacrificing, like you might as well be breaking a donkey's neck. I forgot what all kind of stuff like that the different prophets say, where they're like, God's like, I don't like your offerings. They stink. You might as well be burning up dogs and mice and handing them to me and telling me that this is what a clean offering is, because there's nothing about what you're doing that I like, because of who you are. It's not because the sacrifices aren't appropriate. They are the ritual sacrifices, as stated. The behavior and the heart with which they are given is making me very angry, because he sees the heart. By the which will we have sanctified through the offering of the body of Yeshua once. And then they add at the end, for all, but that's not there. It just says the offering of the body of Yeshua once. So it's like Yeshua offered his body once, because that's what he needed to do. because that's what you need to do. And every priest standeth daily ministering and offering oftentimes the same sacrifices, which can never take away sins. That's not what they do. You can't take them away. But this man, after he had offered one sacrifice for sins forever, sat down at the right hand of God. So he gave the one real sacrifice, his own life, and he was able to sit down at the right hand of God. That's what you're being offered. If you'll sacrifice your sin, you could sit down there with him. Okay? But this man, after he had offered one sacrifice for sins forever, sat down at the right hand of God. From henceforth expecting till his enemies be made his footstool. For by one offering he hath perfected forever them that are sanctified. So what's the one offering that'll sanctify you forever? Offer your life. Quit being you and start being him. That is the offering that you have to offer. Everything else you offer is completely pointless and wasteful, because the blood of bulls and goats has never been able to save you. It's never been its purpose. It's never been what it was for. The blood that's going to end up being spilling is your own. Okay? Whether that's metaphorically, because you're killing the man you were, or even physically, because some people are going to have to pay physically with their lives for what they believe. Some people are going to have to step in front of that bullet. Some people are going to have to get on that cross. Some people have to put their head in that noose. It's just, pray you're not one of those. All right, so, perfected and sanctified, whereupon the Holy Ghost also is a witness to us, for after that he had said before, quote, this is the covenant that I will make with them in those days, says Jehovah. I will put my law into their hearts, and in their minds will I write them. Here's where he writes them in your minds, right here on them. This is where he writes them in your minds, across your forehead. Remember when the angels come looking, they see who's got the mark on their forehead? If your mark is of the beast, which is the kingdom of the world, then you're the bad ones. If your hands have the mark of the beast, kingdom of the world, you're the bad ones. If the mark on you is the mark of obedience to the word of Jehovah, then you're on the right side of it. All right, and their sins, their iniquities, I remember no more, because that person is dead. He is the God of the living, not of the dead. He's not sitting there holding things against folks that are dead. He holds things against people that are living. You got to be living to make him mad at you, right? All right, and their sins and iniquities I remember no more. Now where remission of these is, there is no more offering for sin. So that's just saying, you have nothing else to offer. When you've offered your life, you don't have anything else to give, because everything else belongs to him. In fact, some would say your life belongs to him. You hadn't figured it out yet, because you couldn't come to him unless he called you. And the only reason you responded when he called was because you were one of his lambs to begin with. He made you that way. You were one of the fortunate ones. Be thankful you were. I'm not going to argue with people about Calvinism. I don't think that's what Calvin even thought. Having therefore, brethren, boldness to enter in the holiest by the blood of Yeshua. Okay, so remember when he died, the temple veil was torn. The holiest place was torn open that we might see what was inside. Of course, what was inside? There was nothing inside. The Ark of the Covenant was gone. There was nothing in there to see. It was gone. Well, where had it gone? It was in you. By a new and living way, which he hath consecrated for us through the veil, that is to say, his flesh. So we want to cross that veil, we must take on flesh like his. What kind of flesh has he got? The kind that died for Jehovah. That's the kind of flesh he's got. All right. Let's see here. And having a high priest over the house of Elohim, let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. So your evil conscience is the thing that the blood sacrifice is taken from. That's what you're getting sprinkled with.
because you killed the evil conscience. And you took its blood and got your sprinkling done with. And then you got washed with pure water, which is the word and the water that would have been in the... when you came to the altar sacrifice, he's like, you kill your evil conscience and lay it on that burning altar and burn it away. Come and wash your hands after that, because you're getting ready to go into the Holy of Holies. Okay? And this is what we learned about today. Let us hold fast. That means hold it strongly. The profession of our faith without wavering. For he is faithful that promised. So he says, if you'll sacrifice your life and just stick with that and never go back, he's going to keep every promise he's made. And let us consider one another to provoke unto love and to good works. So let's make sure that when we're in each other's presence, we say, hey, have you been doing such and such? I heard you've been out there at the homeless shelter feeding people. So, oh, yeah, I have. Yeah. That's cool, man. That's awesome. And that really shows what Yehovah's doing in your life. It's like, yeah, I know, man. Thank you for that. We got these kids, and they're up now. I can hear them. I had to sit in the shower and cry because I knew that one day when I'm gone and these kids are grown, they're going to look back and they're going to think, I love that man who did this for me, but the reason that he did it was because Yehovah dwelled within him. There was no me. It was Yehovah who did what they needed. I just allowed myself to be the vessel by which he administrated his will into this world. Let us consider provoke one another good works, not which really is just reminding each other that let Yehovah take over, man. Just let Yehovah drive. Jesus, take the wheel. Just let Yehovah drive. It'll work. Not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together as the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as ye see the day approaching. I believe he's talking about assembling themselves together. I think he's talking about going to the feast. Keep going to the feast. As the manner is of some, but extorting one another, which is to say, don't get together to whine and complain and argue about everything, but build each other up, because each of us should be doing the will of Yehovah. That's what we should want. We shouldn't be wasting our time arguing about nonsense. We should say, what's Yehovah's will concerning this? Care for widows and orphans. All right, I'm going to go care for widows and orphans. That's simple. Thanks, James, clarifying that for us, right? Or Jacob. For if we sin willfully, after that we have received the knowledge of the truth, there remains no sacrifice for sins. Okay, that's the way it's always been. That's not nothing new. If you sin willfully against Jehovah, there is no sacrifice you could have brought to atone for it. You better just hope and beg for mercy. Because when you do that, it's completely up to him what he wants to do with you. And only he knows what you got going on inside of you. So you better recognize real quick and start getting clean with him. Because there ain't no sacrifice you can come offer to clean you up. Because there ain't no getting clean that way. There ain't never been no getting clean that way. Every sacrifice was for unintentional sin. Stuff you're like, man, I don't even know what I did. Did I do something wrong? Here, please take this animal offering. Thank you for taking care of me and just letting me get by being the dummy that I am. I'm sorry I'm a dummy. That's a completely different type of asking forgiveness than to say, I chose to walk counter to you. I chose to do what I wanted instead of what you wanted. I was wrong. Please forgive me. The only reason I feel stuff when I say that is because I have been there and I have done that. Oh. For if we sin willfully, there is no more sacrifice, but a certain fearful looking on of judgment and fiery indignation that shall devour the adversaries. He's like, and that's where you have to look at him and say, and you better decide, do I want to be your adversary or do I want to be one of your people? Because if I'm one of your people, you're going to burn me and cleanse me and refine me. If I'm your adversary, you're going to destroy me. He that despises Moses' law died without mercy under the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. This is talking about earthly things. It's like all it took was 2 or 3 witnesses, and that was it for you. You were gone.
Oh, how much sore the punishment, suppose you, shall he be thought worthy of, who has trodden under foot the Son of Elohim, and hath counted the blood of the covenant wherein he hath sacrificed an unholy thing, and hath done despite unto the Spirit of grace. So this is somebody who is literally not only walking contrary to Yehovah, but considers the say, hey, quit being who you are and be who I want you to be, and says, forget that. I ain't got no interest in what you want. That man who refuses the spirit even of grace, which is say, God's like, I'm going to let you slide and keep working with you. But I'm watching you. He said, I don't care who you're watching. You can't do this. Nothing you can do to me. That is the man who's going to know what sore punishment is. For we know him that hath said, vengeance belongeth unto me, I will recompense, says Yehovah. And again, Yehovah shall judge his people. So it's like, if I consider you an enemy, Yehovah considers you his enemy. He got something saved up for you in his storehouse. And if you're lucky, he'll be merciful in the execution of it. And if not, you might find out what real pain's like. You might find out you might find out who it is that makes nations fall and kingdoms rise. Because he's done it to some of the biggest and baddest. Take, for instance, Nebuchadnezzar. Turn him into a cow for 7 years. He's like, hey, I'm running the whole game, and then one day God's like, that's it. You didn't listen, you're done. 7 years. Dropped him to his knees. He just ate grass and mooed, and had, by the time he's done, he had fingernails like a hawk, because they were so long and overgrown, and nobody could get him held down long enough to cut his fingernails and keep him. I mean, he's just a mess. He just turned him into a mess of a person, and literally an animal man. And then by the end of it, he like stood up and woke up and said, there is an Elohim. Yehovah is the Elohim of heaven. I was wrong. I need to get right with him. And he got to write a portion of the book of Daniel. That is something that no heathen king has ever been allowed to do. But he was allowed to do it because he acknowledged Yehovah's glory. It is a fearful thing to fall in the hands of the living God. Yeah, no kidding. But call to remembrance the former days in which, after you were illuminated, you endured a great fight of affliction. So it says, he's like, he sent the prophets. He told you why it's coming. You've been illuminated. Here it comes. He's like, I've told you what was going to happen. I told you if you walked against me, this was going to happen. I sent a prophet to tell you better quit right now. It's about to happen. It's like, now it's happening. But you endured the great afflictions, partly whilst you were made a gazing stock, both by reproaches and afflictions, and partly whilst you become companions of them that were so used. So he's like, one reason I did it to you was so that everybody else in the world would know that I keep my house in order. I'm going to whoop you in front of everybody and let you know that I don't let you walk over me. I'm running this house. Okay? And then on the other hand, I did it so that those of you who really are my people could console and love and care for and cherish the people who were going through the hard times that came from the sin, right? For you had compassion of me in my bonds, and took joyfully the spoilings of your goods, knowing in yourselves that you have in heaven a better and enduring substance. Okay? Cast not away, therefore, your confidence, which have great recompense of reward. So he's like, there's no reason to stop believing once you got it going. For you have need of patience, that after you have done the will of Yehovah, you might receive the promise. He's like, just be patient. Do what's been told to you. It's coming. Your paychecks are coming. Don't worry. Don't matter. I'm talking myself. I mean, your paychecks are coming. You're gonna make it. You're not gonna suffer. You have had enough money in your bank account for 10 years. You're okay. Got to tell myself because I need to hear it too, right? For yet a little while, and he shall come. For yet a little while, and he that shall come, and will not tarry. Now the just shall live by faith. But if any man draw back, my soul shall have no pleasure in him. So if you put your hand to the plow and start plowing on his behalf, and then you say, I quit. Yehovah's not going to not going to get pleasured by that behavior. Okay, don't be that way. Put your hand in the plow, just keep plowing. The rewards are incredible. Just wait. But we are not of them who draw back unto perdition, but of them that believe to the saving of the soul. So he's literally saying we're not when we sacrifice who we are, when we kill the evil inclination in ourselves, we're going to walk this path and keep walking it and keep walking it, and we're not going to turn back. We're not going to backslide. We're not going to return to who we were. We're going to keep right on rolling until it literally saves our soul, until we literally become the living embodiment of Yehovah, who was embodied by Yeshua. So we're going to be the living embodiment of Yeshua. If you want to say it that way, that's fine. Baruch haba, Yehovah, be blessed, and carry forth the rest of your day and enjoy this wonderful Shabbat. And I'm going to go and love on these kids since they're up and I hear them roaming around. All right. Be blessed.